Hey everybody, it's Angel from Halo Inspirations. We give you inspirations to help you spread beauty and joy through your quilting journey. Happy Hump Day to you. I'm so glad that y'all stopped by. This is the last Christmas Wednesday of the year of 2020, and we're doing another Santa rug, which is a lot easier than the last one, I have to say, and I'm calling it a Christmas tree for Santa and his reindeer. Now, I just want to give you a little history on where my inspiration came from. And I think you'll better understand why I did something like this. If you were to ask my children what their absolute favorite Christmas was in their childhood, they always talk about the Christmas that we spent when my husband was deployed in Operation Iraqi Freedom 1, and we were over in Germany. So we were just the three of us because I have two kids. And when we had moved there the Christmas Eve before, all we brought was suitcases of clothes, passports, and ourselves. So our household goods were stored back in the States. Well, when Christmas rolled around, I didn't want to go out and buy a whole bunch more Christmas ornaments when I had a bunch stored in the States, but I did need a tree. So I went out and bought a pre-lit Christmas tree, and then my kids made all the ornaments with homemade goods. We used styrofoam cups, we used construction paper. I mean, we were crafting it up and we were getting scrappy. It definitely was a scrappy Christmas. And for them, it was one of the most memorable and heartfelt and something they'll never forget. So you can get a little bit scrappy with this one. I did use a layer cake, I will be honest, but you don't have to do that. You can use whatever you have. So what kind of things are you going to need? For the body of the Christmas tree, it will be 8 strips that are 10 inches long. You can do scraps, or you can use a layer cake like I did and just pick from there and just do 2-inch strips, and I believe it's 2-inch. There is a supply list for you in the description box, so you don't have to memorize any of this. But the layer cake that I use is called Jolly Season by Abby Hall for Moda Fabric. So it is a layer cake. So you're going to need 8 of those, and then you'll need a 2.5-inch square if you choose to do a trunk. You don't have to do that. And for the background fabric, you're going to need 1/4 yard. Now, I actually had some, I don't know, it's like a white fabric with this one. It's got some snow flakes in there that you can't see, but trust me, they're there. I don't know. I think I got this at Joann's on the spur of the moment because I needed something in a hurry. But you only need 1/4 yard. That's all you need. Okay, and you're going to have leftovers, but that way you do have enough. So then you will need, for your binding, you will need another 1/4 yard. I actually used, and I'll show you at the end, but I used 22, I cut strips from my layer cake with 4 or 5 other fabrics that match the colors within that layer cake. But I used 22 5-inch by 2.25-inch strips. But you don't have to do that. So if you were going to do a normal binding, you'll need 1/4 yard because it's about a little more than a strip and a half, because it's 63 inches altogether with your extra for your miter corners and your crossover. So that's all you need for that. For your backing, and I use the same one that I did last time, which I don't think you'll find it, but it's special delivery by Moda Fabrics, but it's from 2018. It's super darling. Mine's off-white. I do realize they came in other colors like green and other things like that, but a fat 1/4 will work great, or you could use an 18-inch by 18-inch, which is 1/2 yard or 1/4 yard, right? If you split the 18 inches and split that in half again. So that's what you'll need. You'll just have to buy a 1/2 yard to make sure you're getting that 18 inches, right? So you got the background, 1/4 yard. You got the 8 strips or any scrap material that you have that you like to use, your backing, your binding. Yes, that's all you need, guys, and a little fun and a little inspiration of pulling your fabrics and what you would like to use. So let's go ahead and get this started. I'll see you in just a sec. Okay, so the first part is prepping this paper for your string piecing. And we know that paper is generally 8.5 by 11, and this most certainly is. So I'm going to lay this on top here, and I've got a marking tool. Now, half of 8.5 is 4.25, so I'm going to put a little mark at 4.25. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler, and you have to have a ruler that's going to stretch across, but I'm going to line up so that my ruler is right next to that point, and it's right next to the point of this corner, and I'm simply going to draw a line. Okay, and I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. Line it up next to that point, next to the corner, and you don't even have to draw this if you don't want to. You could just simply cut it right now. I don't know why I do it this way. I guess so I can make sure I'm good to go, because I'm then just going to simply cut it. Okay, I'm going to go around the other side and do that. Now it helps if you have a different blade to use to cut paper so that you don't waste your blade, because it will dull your blade and it's not good for your fabric. Whoops. So if you have more than one when you do paper, any kind of string piecing or paper piecing, it's always helpful if you have one that is meant for just the paper, like use an older blade. Okay, and now we have our triangle for a Christmas tree. Now what I've also done is I went ahead and cut some 2-inch strips of the different fabrics. Okay, one of each just to begin. If I need more, I will. But I also have some remnants from the first Christmas tree that I showed you. So I'll be using those also. I just want to make sure that I go all the way across my triangle here. And remember, we're going to have a 1/4-inch seam. So you always want to make sure you have enough, and then after that you can use your remnants of what you have. And if you have to cut a longer piece, then you just simply do another 2-inch strip. But I'm going to take you closer to the sewing machine. I know I've done a video on string piecing, but I'm just going to get you started and let you see how I've string pieced this particular Christmas tree. So I will see you in just a bit. Okay, so triangle in place. The first strip, I'm going to use Santa, because we all love Santa. And I just want to make sure that I've got a little bit hanging off on this edge and some hanging off on that edge, right? And what I'm really going to make sure to do here is put a little line of glue just to hold it in place. I'm not quite sure where I put it, so I'm just putting a little bit extra, but it's a very, very light film. You're even having a hard time seeing it on camera. But I'm going to place this down, and that glue is just simply to hold it in place while I get started. Now, I will say you can use a pin. I used to use a pin, but I just need it to stay a little bit. I'm not even, yep, it's going to stay. Okay, the second piece I'm going to want to do is, and you can play with this, you can use scraps. You can do anything that you like. But the second one I'm going to do is definitely my reindeer. Now when you're doing, if you've got directional prints, you'll want to make sure that you're putting that fabric on just the way that you like it, okay? And for this one, you do want to make sure that you're looking about 1/4 of an inch overlap so that you know your edges are going to go all the way around, all the way through it. And then I'm going to flip it over. And if I really wanted to, I could at this point, you know, flip it to see whether or not it was going to work. But I'm happy with it. So I'm going to line it up right on top. Okay. I'm going to take it over here to my sewing machine. Now I've got a 1/4 inch seam lined up, but I will tell you it's not that big of a deal at this point, whether your 1/4 inch seam is 100% accurate or not. As a matter of fact, you'll see that my guide is not going to be much help here. The one thing that you just want to try to do is keep your fabrics lined up together. And I'm going to attempt here to start a little bit inside this, on the outside of the paper, but a little bit close because I'm going to chop it off and I don't want to have to pull out threads that I don't need to. And you're going to want to just do your best to get about a 1/4 inch seam. It's not necessary to be 100% accurate. You just want to try and keep it straight. Okay, I'm going to lower my needle. Now, I will tell you, when you're doing anything with paper, you want to lower your stitch to, I do 1.8. If you go too far, it will perforate the paper before you're ready for it to. If you leave it too high, then it's going to make it so your threads are loose and it'll make it difficult to pull the paper out. You may actually have some loose threads whenever you're after you're done pulling the paper out. 1.8 seems to work really nicely for me. And you're just going to simply stitch right through the paper and the fabric. When I'm caught on something, I can see it. It probably nested a little bit. It certainly did. I can feel it. We're going to keep going. We'll see what happens here. But I feel like it's bunching. It got caught on it. See how it's bubbling back there? It definitely got caught. Okay, and then I'm going to cut threads. We're going to see what happened here. Yeah, see how it nested? I didn't have a hold of it really well, but that's okay because I'm going to cut this part off, so it's going to be fine. But when you flip this over, you're going to then want to take it to your pressing board and give it a press. And you just press right on top of the paper, right on top of the fabric. Press that gorgeous seam right open. And what I like to do sometimes, if I feel like I'm going to need this, I will definitely use my rotary cutter and cut some of this off. We're going to see here. The next one that I'm going to do is a blue Santa. See, I've got kind of a method to my madness here. That one's not going to be long enough. So if I line it up with this to here, you know, with this exact one, it's actually going to cover everything. So I'm just going to lay it right on top. Take it back to the sewing machine. Get myself squared up here. Hopefully this one doesn't nest as well. It happens. I didn't have a hold of it quite well enough, so it just kind of grabbed on and pulled on it. I just want to make sure I'm straight with the fabric. Okay. Now this time we're going to lower the presser foot, lower the needle, holding onto your thread. Remember, you're at a 1.8 stitch length, and you're just simply going to want to stitch them together. Try and keep them as straight as possible so that your stitch is straight. Now this, I think string piecing this would, I mean, you can use scraps, you can use various colors, you can be creative. You don't have to do them on the diagonal like I did. There's so many variations. You just have to get this paper covered. Okay, go ahead and cut threads. Pull this over, flip it back, boom. We have our third strip. Now you'll see the paper gets smaller and smaller like this, right? So when I do my next one, which this one would be blue, I don't think I have a piece big enough for that area. I sure don't. So I will go ahead and utilize this one. And you'll see I'm going to have a little corner, and whatever I use down here, you ain't going to see. It's going to be hidden inside of a 1/4 inch seam. So I could do a couple of things. I could, after this is pressed, I could make this strip smaller, right? I could sew this one in like so, and that'll give me a little bit more. Or I could go ahead with the 1/4 inch seam, and with whatever is left, I could just use a little sliver. Just know that it's not going to probably show, okay? It may just a little bit, so, you know, I'd probably use a little tiny piece of Santa and cut that. But you do have options. You just have to get the paper covered. So you could make this skinnier. You could make it line up like so, and then you've got a bigger piece down here for whatever fabric you want to use, and it'll have more that will show available to you. Or, like I said, just use something. Know that a little sliver may show. So try to keep the colors with what you're using. Don't use, like, if you have no black, I wouldn't use black in the corner, right? I mean, if black was part of yours, black would work. But you just want to keep those colors consistent of whatever you're using, but you could use a little tiny piece there, and that's probably what I'm going to do. And we'll see how that works. And then on the other side, you just continue to do the same thing. You just want to get the paper, you want to make sure you're covering the paper, okay? So again, I would like this piece, so I'm going to flip it down here. I'm going to make sure that everything covers. Now we get smaller up here, so what I'm really paying attention to on this side is over here. And I could probably pull it in just a smidge, okay? And then that way I have more left over here that may work down here, right? Okay, if I flipped it over, it does cover all the paper. So I would take this to the sewing machine and go ahead and stitch this and go all the way covering everything. When I'm done with mine, I'm going to pull you in and show you the next steps. So again, you'll want to put your original piece on, get your second piece going. Once you have it stitched, go ahead and press it out. Get your next one, stitch it on, making sure you're covering all the paper, press it out, and just keep going until all of your triangle is completely covered. using a lower stitch count than what you usually do, okay? So that paper is really easy to get off of here because we don't want to leave it in the quilt, right? So I'm going to get mine done and I will see you all in just a bit. Okay, so I got all my strips placed on. Yep, it looks a little cray-cray. I totally agree. So here's what I'm going to do at this point. Now, like I said, there's many ways to do your triangle in the middle. This is the method that I chose because I think it's simple, fast, and easy and allows a lot of flexibility in using scraps or leftover fabrics. But I'm just going to cut this up and take off all the remnants for now. Get this cleaned up a bit, but here's the deal. I am going to leave the paper on for now. And I'll explain why here in just a second. Just want to get it cleaned up. And then you'll understand when I talk about it here in just a second. So all I'm doing is lining up my ruler along the edge of the paper and just cutting off all the extra, okay? Now, like I said, I'm gonna leave the paper on. Typically, I would take it off by now, but I got to thinking. We have so many bias edges. It's a triangle, guys. And I don't want to distort it. So one of the ways of doing that is to leave this paper on, and that way you can keep from helping it from stretching out of shape. So the next step is to cut yourself some background fabric. Now there's a couple ways to do this too. You could cut a couple of triangle or rectangles that are at least an inch taller than the fabric or than the triangle. So this was 11 inches tall. If you remember, I had an 8.5 by 11. So I've actually cut a 12-inch width or height, I'm sorry, strip, okay? It's 12 inches high. You could cut two very wide pieces of rectangle, simply place this on top. Well, we'll do it like this. And basically sew two rectangles onto it. However, I wanted to save a little fabric because that will be wasteful. Now I will tell you, because I'm using solid, it's a little different. And I'll show you why in here in just a sec. But it's an inch taller. So I had 11 inches of paper. So this is a 12-inch tall piece of fabric. We also know that this was 8.5 inches wide. What you want to do is divide that in half. So that gives us 4.25, then add an inch. So you're adding an inch to the top and to the width. We added an inch to the 11, so I got 12 inches tall. We took the 8.5 divided by 2, so that's 4.25, and we're going to add an inch. So this is 5.25 wide. 5.25, or yeah, that's right, 5.25 in width, 12 inches tall. And very simply, we're going to take our ruler. Now, mind you, you have to have a ruler that spans the length. And you want to line it up. We're going to cut this in half, but you want to line it up so when you have your blade on that corner, that it's hitting the corner. If you actually put your blade on the corner, you're going to be next to it, right? So I'm just going to line it up right next to you so my blade hits it, hits that corner, and I'm very simply going to cut this in half. Okay? Now, if you get off a little bit, don't stress, really. Now, what you're going to want to do is now you have two triangles. Okay? Now, you'll notice this one won't work. So this is the beauty behind using, look at all that bling, guys. This is the beauty behind using a solid. You just flip this one over. You're going to take it to your sewing machine, Give yourself at least 1/4 inch on each side. And you're just going to sew this side on, flip it and press. Then you will do the same thing with this one. And you'll be able to make it even because you'll have a piece there. Stitch this 1/4 inch. Flip and press. Now I will tell you it'll look a little wonky when you do that, but we'll talk about that when I'm done. But the reason why it's a little different, so we cut a solid piece of fabric in half, right? Let's pretend that we cut a piece. Now I just took a scrap of rectangle fabric that I had, so it's not the same size, but you'll understand the idea behind this. If you use a print for your background, you're going to have to do 2 triangles, or I'm sorry, 2 rectangles. Okay, and here's why. So this piece fit here, but this piece did not. And if you flipped it, the wrong side's going to show. So, and therefore, you're going to have to do 2 rectangles with printed fabric and to be able to have 2 sides. Okay, so I wanted to point that out, and like I said, you very well could have used 2 rectangles and just sewn them on there on that line on each side and then square it off, but I again tried to save some fabric. So I'm going to get this sewn together and I'll be back to show you the next steps. Now remember, I am leaving the paper on. Okay, so that's going to help keep my fabric stable so that it doesn't pull or distort my pretty triangle. So I'll see you guys in just a bit. Okay, so I got my both sides on, and as you see, it's a little wonky. Don't let that stress you out. This is supposed to be a stress-free project. We're just having some fun with this, okay? I still have the paper on. So here's what we're going to do. Now, if you actually pay more attention on how much space is up here and bring it down a little more closely, at least 1/4 inch, so add 1/4 inch, the skinnier parts of the rectangle will fold out more and you'll be able to do the full width. I didn't want to deal with any of that. I just wanted to make this fun. So I gave myself at least 1/4 inch on each side. So what I have to do, I know that this edge down here is straight. So I'm lining up, believe it or not, you would think the 4 1/4 mark, but because my sides were skinnier, I'm not able to do that. So I'm actually lining up that point on the 4 inch line, okay? Then I'm just simply going to give myself, well, a couple of straight edges here. There's one. Clip off that end. Give myself another. So now I have 2 straight edges, okay? The next thing I'm going to do, I know this is straight. I want to give myself 1/4 inch above this point where the background meets this beautiful point that we have created. So I'm going to get it nice and straight, and I'm going to line up right above it, above that 1/4 inch. Okay, not on it, not so I'm going to cut off any of this pretty print, but right above it, as if I was going to sew right above it. And then make sure everything's straight. Just didn't pull that off well enough. Yeah, okay. And I'm going to give myself 1/4 inch above that point. Okay. Looking better. Looking better. Now I'm going to put this back on here. I want to see. Yep. So when I line this point up, here's the deal. You get a straight edge over here now. We actually have a straight edge down at the bottom. I have a nice straight edge along the top here. And of course, my 1/4 inch is above that point, right above it. I'm going to make sure everything is straight. And I'm actually going to end up trimming just a little, I think. And I'll show you here in just a bit. So I think what I'm going to do temporarily, yep, I'm actually going to line that point up down at the bottom, okay, with where that point is with the fabric. Seeing how both sides are equal, I'm still making sure I'm a 1/4 inch above that line, okay. Everything needs to be straight. I'm actually going to probably end up trimming just a tiny bit off this bottom. Yep, I will. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling it over. I don't have a mark. Here we go. I'm pulling it over to where this little point meets, okay? And when I do that, I'm just trying to make sure I'm about equal with what will be left on. Do I need to do that? Let's just take a peek. Hold on, 1/4 inch. If I cut this to 10.5, nope, I'm going to leave it just like that. Okay, so I'm going to cut where there's a little bit left over on the gray of each side. Does it have to be perfect? Absolutely not, guys. Absolutely not. I just need to make sure that I'm straight when I cut this, that I'm a 1/4 inch above this point. And I'm going to go ahead, oh, not quite straight. Bear with me here. Yep, okay. I'm going to go ahead and give it a cut. Now you'll see I have a little bit over here and not over here, so I'm going to flip it over one more time. I'm going to line up this line and that line and the line down here. This looks fantabulous. It's slightly over, I will say, the 4. It's more like 3 7/8. But you know what, guys? It's supposed to be fun. I'm just trying to get this a little bit more equal. Try it again because I didn't quite get through all that down there. There we go. Perfect. Now here's what happens. You've got a little bit of gray on each side, but that's going to be taken up down here when it comes to putting on some more background fabric. I'm just trying to get it a little bit more centered to make it look a little bit more centered. I do have my 1/4 inch on top, so I'm not going to lose that point. Okay. And the next step, of course, is going to be for you to go ahead and you're going to want to pull off your paper. Now I'll do all of this off camera so you don't have to sit here and watch, but it's really not hard, especially if you put a little hole in it. Go ahead and rip her off. Of course, your seams are going to look absolutely gorgeous. So you're just going to want to take off all the paper at this point. Okay, and like I said, I won't bore you with this on camera, but it's not hard. It'll come out nice, especially if you lowered that stitch count. Now, that 5 1/4 inch strip that you did originally, if you cut from yardage, we cut 12 inches, we'll say they're 40, so what does that leave you with? 18? 12 and 18 is 30, so 28 inches. Nope, we did 12. 48. Yeah, 28 inches, right? Sorry, that's math on the spot. So, if you measure this out now, what we get is, got to be straight and everything, but it's about 10.5 inches in height and about, I don't know why I'm flipping it around. We can just measure on top here. 8 inches across. 10.5 down, 8 inches across. So you're going to need 2 strips. I'm using 2.5 strips that are 10.5 inches by 2.5. And I'm basically just going to take 10 inches off the really long 5 1/4 that I had. 5 1/4 is more than 5 because 2.5 times 2 is 5. So I'm basically just going to cut 10-inch strip off and then place my ruler down, cut 2.5 inches and 2.5 inches, and then add them to the sides. After that, I'll come back at you when I have mine done. With the magic of video, we will see that all finished, and then I can take you to the next step. So I'll see y'all in just a sec. Okay, next step, guys, we got this on here. You should have a 10.5 by 12 at this point, and you add on your 2.5 inch strips. So also taking from that 5 1/4 strip, I had enough to do 2 12-inch strips. Now I want a little trunk. Now because my background is gray, what I have elected to do is use black this time for my trunk. So in order to do that, I have my 12-inch strip. I'm going to just basically fold it in half. You could line it up on 6 inches, call her done. Right? But I just don't always like doing math or thinking, so you're just going to simply cut it in half. And at that point, you're going to want to sew your, I cut a 2.5 inch square piece of fabric, so it is the same width. And I'm going to sew those together. Now we want to make sure that we have a 12-inch piece of fabric. So it is 2 inches wide with the seam allowance. So you're going to want to be wherever it will be for 12 inches, that you can have 12 inches that's centered, okay? So 4 plus 4 is 8, 9, 10. That won't work. You could just simply do this, guys. Look, we're going to do it again. Instead of doing math, let's just, this piece wasn't quite 12 inches. It was different. I didn't cut it in the middle. So we're just going to fold it in half, put a little crease in it. That's my center mark. So I want that center mark to be at the 6-inch line. There we go. That makes more sense. So if this was centered at 6, this seam will be 5, this seam will be 7. Then you just simply cut off your extras on a straight line. This way should be easier. You should be able to line it up on the 12. It should still show 6 in the middle, 7 and 5. You want to make sure it's straight. There we go. And not quite straight. Then you just want to cut it so it's 12 inches long. And then you will apply this piece to the bottom. This piece will go on the top. And then our topper will be finished. Now you want to make sure that you square this off, okay? So we started with 10.5. We add 5. That'll give us 15.5. That'll give us 15. This will give us 14.5. So it should finish at 12 by 14.5. I'm going to get these on, and then the next step is to go ahead and get it basted with your background fabric. I will tell you that you can again use a fat quarter very easily, or you can cut yourself an 18 by 18 piece or a 20 by 18 piece. And that should give you enough fabric all the way around with your batting. Okay, so that you can get this quilted. Now I'm going to show you some ideas when I go to do this, or not more than one. I'm going to show you how on that first one I did the diagonals, and I actually used a walking foot along with a ruler. I know that I might get some hate mail for this, but it works and it's very safe, and it depends on how that walking foot of yours works. Mine worked great, so I'm going to show that in the next part. But first I'm going to get the last 2 strips on. I'm going to make sure it's squared. I'm going to then baste it to my quilt, and you don't even have to square it at that point because we're going to square it later, and you're going to have some shrinkage and some different things going on that might make it a little wonky. So just get your top piece on, your bottom piece on, get it nice pressed, nice and pretty, get it basted to your backing and your batting, and get ready to quilt. So I'm going to finish this all up, and I will see you at the sewing machine to show you the next steps. Okay, this is probably going to be my most challenging video because I got a lot going on here and I want to show you some things. So what I have here is my pack-a-mat. We do have a few of them left on our website. It's not wool, and actually this is my prototype. That's why you're seeing some of this over here. But it's made out of alpaca fiber, which is a little bit different than wool. It has a lot different things to help you get your crisp seams, and it does reflect heat much better than wool, and it doesn't have the allergens that wool does. So just to let you know, now I'm going to be marking with this ultimate marking pencil, and I talked about it in the last video, and I'm sorry about the shadows. I can't figure out how to get rid of them. But the reason I'm doing it is, number one, it's a light white pencil, right, that you can draw on dark fabric. I need to sharpen mine. However, if you make an error, or when you're done, you simply just iron it and it's gone. So it's an awesome tool to use. Right now I'm sold out, but my next order, which should be here soon, I have some more coming in. So if you're interested in purchasing, you can find that on our website. And what I have done is I have actually basted this on, and I know you can't see the whole thing again because my camera doesn't give you that whole picture. So I took a picture, and I'll place it here, how I've got this line going all the way down for me, and this line all the way down, including at the edges. So yes, I'm using a walking foot, and I very simply lined up my ruler along with this side, and I marked it, and I made my ruler so it would be okay, and I marked along this edge so it would be a straight edge all the way down, so I get a nice clean angle, and I know how much to go further, and I've done it both on the top and the bottom to make sure we're good to go to start. Yes, because that's going to help. Now the struggle becomes when I'm actually stitching here. I tell y'all I'm about, oh my gosh, I don't know, 3 feet away, so I can't see real well, but I want to be able to show you the stitching that's going to occur on this quilt. Took me a minute. Now, I will not be stitching on this line, okay? I'm going to be stitching next to it. I'm using the line as a guide, plain and simple. So I'm going to place it underneath. I do have my walking foot, and I'm using a light colored gray. Now, I think I normally would be using a darker gray. If you can see, this is going to show up like nobody's business. If I didn't have a gray that matched, I would definitely use something that's lighter. I always go lighter and not darker, okay? But this is going to be able to help you see a little bit on what I'm doing. And it's not the end of the world, guys. It really is truly not. So I'm going to get this started. Now let me just make sure I'm starting on the right side, because I want to be able to use my ruler. Now let me show you on my walking foot. I have these two areas here, one on either side, that is where it holds it together. That's what I'm going to line this up against, and I'm going to be stitching along, of course, in the middle of my walking foot. But because I have this extra piece, it doesn't go up over the ruler, because you want to be safe. You don't want to do something that's not safe and that you could hurt yourself with. So I'm basically going to line up and I have to think about how I want to do this. So I'm lining up my ruler that it's going to touch this piece right here. And I'm going to go ahead and, I'm not actually on my fabric yet because I don't want to bury threads, guys. So I might end up pulling this out. We're just going to see here for just a second. If I line this up like so, or, yep, I'm not going to do it like this. I'm going to go ahead and lift my needle. And I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to put this line right along. If I did a 1/4 inch, yep, I'm going to do it at a 1/4 inch. My foot here, nope. Yeah, I am. I'm just trying to decide which side, which side do I want to do this line? I'm going to do it on this side, because that's the side with the ruler. If it doesn't line up great, it's going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. And we can just make sure that we do the same going both directions. So I'm going to do it on, we have two sides of this line. We've got this side and we've got this side. I'm lining the ruler on this side, okay? Because that's where I drew the line. So I'm going to make sure that it's lined up on that side. And when I put my walking foot down, it's going to butt up against my ruler with this little piece right here. And you're going to see how it doesn't jump over the top of that, because that is a big no-go. Some people won't like what I'm doing right now, and that's okay. You don't have to do this. You can use painter's tape to help guide you. There's a lot of different ways, but I just wanted to make this easy. Straight lines are not easy at all. So I'm going to put this back down, and I'm going to begin to stitch. Now, whenever you use a ruler, one of the things that you want to do is you want to put your hand on the ruler, but you also want to be grabbing the fabric, okay? Because if you're just putting it on the ruler, your fabric is not going to move. And typically I would be using some quilting gloves, so you might see those pop up later, because I can tell the difference when I'm quilting when I don't have them on. It's harder to grip, but I want to show you it's not impossible. And I'm just going to stitch through this. Yep, it might have been good to do it on the other side, but that's okay. All right, so we're going to keep on going. Now, because that line stopped, now I'm lining my ruler up along here, along the edge of the fabric where it meets my decorative, where the background meets the decorative. And you just want to try and keep it straight. All we're doing is guiding the needle to where you want to go. And if you look, see how if you watch this as I stitch, okay, it does not jump over that 1/8 of an inch at all. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I will tell you guys, I'm doing this a little bit different than the first one I did. And you know what? That's part of the fun. Just so you know, it is part of the fun. I'm going to slide my ruler down, keeping it nice and straight. Whoop, now see, I'm getting off track because I'm not holding it correctly. I don't want to go crazy with it, so I'm just going to tilt it a little bit. My husband will like this way better because he thought it needed a little something at the beginning. So he might like this quilting a little better, but I'll tell you the difference here in just a bit. So we just want to try to keep this nice and straight. Come off at the end, and I'm going to cut threads. Now I'm going to pull you back to the larger camera. All right. My original quilting plan, I actually drew a line right up the middle. And I started at this point where it met. Okay? So that way I was getting some triangles that formed over top. Okay? I'm not doing it this time. This time I'm actually doing just straight lines. So what's going to happen, it's going to be over here. I'm going to get an X up here, and I'm okay with that. It's going to be okay. My husband felt like I needed to do something like that anyway. So we're going to play with this and see how it works out. If you don't like it, you just simply draw a line straight up the middle. Okay, and then you start at a place where it meets, okay? But we've got a nice straight line that runs all the way down, okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to place it on the 1/4 inch because I have to be able to see. And my 1/4 inch is dotted. It's going to make it a little bit wide. I don't think I want to do it on here. Maybe I do. I'm going to go ahead and line it up on the ruler. You know, that's the beauty behind quilting. You can do whatever it is that makes you feel comfortable, makes it so you like it. And basically what I need is, I need 4 lines, guys. Okay, so I'm going to place this underneath. I'm going to go back up at the top. I'm going to get my ruler out. Got to move my thread so I can grab it. I'm going to line it up. I don't think I did it this way the first time either, but it's going to give me that distance. Okay. And that is pretty, you know what? I'm not even going to use the ruler. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to line up. This is what we're going to do. We're going to line up. I got to get a different marker because I don't know what I did with it. I'm going to line this foot up along with this stitch. It's going to give me a skinnier line. I want the skinnier lines. I don't want them too big, but you can change it. You can make them bigger. And there is absolutely not a thing wrong with that. So I'm going to drop my needle outside so I don't have to bury threads, because I do not like burying threads. And I really should have my quilting gloves on, but you can see that this works very nicely. And the idea is to keep your foot lined up as best as you can in the same spot. So you want to look ahead. You want to see where this is going. You don't watch the needle. It's not going to help you any. There's nothing there to guide you. Okay? So you're just going to simply try to keep that nice and straight. Now again, you can do other methods. You could actually mark the entire quilt how you want to do it. You can use painter's tape. There's so many ways to do straight lines. Straight lines, though, typically are not straight, just so you know. And if you really want to disguise it, you could do wavy lines instead. But I want to do a straight line because my triangle is straight. So it was important to me to try and do as straight as possible. All right, I'm going to cut threads. Now, if I really wanted to keep them real straight, and not worry so much, you see I got a nice thing going here. What I could have done is used a ruler. Okay, you can line this up any way that you like, and that'll help keep that line nice and straight. Okay, any way that you like to keep it going. Could have done it on here, and actually if you look, that's pretty straight right there. So you know, let's try this. Let's see what happens. Because this is completely different than what I've done. We're just going to have a little fun because, y'all, there's not supposed to be any stress. Remember? No stress. So I'm actually going to move this over just a bit. Now, if you look, if I line up my 1/4 inch on this line, I'm pretty good at that same distance. So I'm going to drop my needle outside before I get to my quilt. We want that same angle. You just want to make sure that you hold your ruler and your fabric, because if you don't hold both, if you just try to push down on the ruler, your fabric isn't going to go anywhere. I'm a little bit off here. All right, there we go. And that will help keep that line nice and straight. I'm going to pull this down some. Try to get this angle correct. There we go. And it's not quite correct because I'm off. There we go. Just going to keep on pushing forward. And it does really nice to help you keep that real nice straight line. At any point you can stop quilting. Now you see, I'm a little bit bigger, but you're not going to be able to tell in the big scheme of things. You're just not. Try to get myself back on track. It's a little different working with a ruler that is 12.5 inches by 6.5. Pull this down. There we go. Just want to try and keep that angle nice and pretty. Okay, I'm going to cut threads. Let's see how we did here. Very nice, very nice. I'm liking this. I'm going to turn it the other way so you can see it. And I'll make this a little straighter because that's probably going to drive you nuts. Okay, so we've got a nice, we got 2 stripes going. I'm actually going to do one more, okay? And that'll give us, well, it'll give me 3 stripes. This one doesn't count, okay? I could stop here and utilize this as one and actually stitch down here. You know what? Maybe I'll do that. Yep, we're going to go ahead and do that. So, because I think it'll add to the craziness at the top that my husband was interested in seeing. So I lined up the ruler on that side. So I'm actually going to attempt to stitch right along this line right here so it meets at this point, okay? All right. So we just keep on sewing right along that line. And actually what I'm doing is using that foot to help guide. Now, I should have pulled that up. I should have pulled a extra thread, and I'm going to show you how to do that here. All right, I ended right here, okay? Typically, here, I'll do it down here. Let me switch this around. Let me do it down here. It's going to be a little wider down there. All right. Whoops, I just cut. Try it again. Lower that needle. I don't have anything to grab, but hopefully it doesn't nest. I'm going to go right along that edge of that line. My whole idea is to come to that point. All right, now typically if I'm going to stop in the middle of a quilt, I will lift my needle, I will pull it out and cut threads somewhere else. What that is going to allow me to do, let's see, do I have something to pick? I do not. Okay, so what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to be able to pull up the bottom thread like so, and I can tie this off. For now. And I can bury it, I can bury it later. Okay? Yep. So, what we got? We got 3 really good lines, okay? From here, what I like to do because I want space between 3 lines. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this back under, and I'm only going to do this one with you, and I'll show you how to start below the trunk area, below the tree, because it's a little different. But I want to give myself an inch. Everything works in odd numbers. If you do that, it looks more appealing to the eye. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to actually put this on an inch mark. Okay. I'm going to get this all lined up. Let me move this out of the way. Oh, I just found my pointer. So I'm lining that last stitch line on an inch. Okay. And then I'm going to pull in my walking foot so that it settles right next to it. Okay. Keeping sure that I'm on that inch line. Now I got a little gap right here instead of being flush. So I'm going to attempt to steer it in. Well, maybe that's a lot. So maybe I'll just move it just a tad. There we go. So now I'm going to use this ruler, lower the needle, to get that gap for myself. And I will show you guys what that looks like in just a second. Now remember, it's on that inch mark, so don't, it's hard whenever you were doing on a 1/4 inch. But now we're on the inch. I'll move this just a little, trying to keep it the same. I'm going to slide this down. When you slide it down, make sure you're staying at that same angle. Okay. I'm going to slide it down again. Slide it down again. You can see how I weaved a little bit on the last one. That's okay. Getting it straight now. Cut threads. Okay, pull this out. Now you see I've got a nice, beautiful straight line to work with. Okay, and a gap. All right, so then we do this exact same thing. We start at the top, we line it up, and we stitch 3 more lines. Okay, then you'll do an inch gap and however many lines you got left. Okay, so I've actually done 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yes, I've done 3 stitches, and you can see them on both sides. 1, 2, 3 here. And actually it's 4 because we had this area down here and on top. Same thing over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I did the gap. Okay, and I'm just going to simply keep doing this. Now what I wanted to mention, when we sewed on this side, and you watched me, we went from top to bottom. Okay, why did we do that? Majority of the quilt is over here. Okay, I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. When I stitched over here, the majority of the quilt was over here. I want to keep the majority of the quilt on the outside of my needle. If I were going to do that on this side, the majority of the quilt would be on the inside. That's a no-go. So you want to start from the bottom on the other side. Whatever it is to keep yourself straight, you want to push that to the other side. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get this bottom area done, okay? And I'll stitch one more over here just so you get clarification. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and get this started here. Remember, we're sewing from the bottom because I want the majority of my quilt away from my needle, away from the machine, because there's not a lot of space under here. So you really want the majority over here. Now I need the gap here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up Nope, we can't do it that way. On the bottom side, when you're stitching on this side, you can see I can line up my needle, my ruler, okay, very easily along this line and get the stitching done. But when we're getting more towards the inside here, I need to be able to line up on this line. So this is the one time your majority of your quilt's going to be on the inside. And I had to think about it, and I'm sorry, guys. And it's going to feel a little awkward. Whoop, I got this on the wrong end. But I'm actually going to line it up on this inch line. Now, this is actually a 1/2 inch because this is my quarter. This is then another quarter, so that's a 1/2. But I want it to be straight. Now, the awkward side of this is I don't get to start on the outside of my quilt. So I am going to have to bury threads. And what you have to do is line that line up right here. Line your needle up so it actually goes inside of the stitch line. Now, it's a lot of fun doing this through camera, so I hope I'm good, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to line that line up, put your needle down, you're going to want to head and pull it up, and whoop, look, it's not even inside there. So I have to make sure that my thread is in there. There we go. Pull that a little taut. I'm going to hold up here because mine sometimes stretches. I'm going to attempt to pull up I'm going to move this out of the way just for a bit. I'm going to pull up my bottom thread. And yep, I'm doing it without. It's easier if you have tweezers. It'll make it a heck of a lot easier. So I've pulled my thread up. I'm going to line this back up. Okay. Line this back up. Line this back up. Everything needs to be lined up. Now that's not going to land where I want it to. Because remember, we want the needle to be in. Oh, look at that. Did y'all see that? I hit a button. So I want it to be in the center, and I'm going to put it right back down in there. Make sure everything's lined up. I'm holding on to my threads because when you get started, you don't want them to back up. And I'm just basically going to do another straight line. Okay. Then, and you'll do this on the other side too, but it'll be opposites for you. Now I've got them both in there. I'm able to bury those threads. And you'll know as you go how far you have to stitch. I'm going to do 3 stitches. Oh no, I did 4. I'm going to pull this around. Notice if I start stitching, this is not going to work, right? So I got to go a little bit further. I did 3 more. That's much better. See how that angle is coming in? And I'm just going to stitch again. And then I'm going to stop on that stitch line where the seam is. And on this side, it happens to be that the mountain is in the background. So I want to go just past that. Remember, we want 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I went 5. We'll see what happens. Oh, and I hit a button again. All right. Not enough. So put it back down. 1, 2, 3. That would be 8. There we go. Perfect. Notice how this line is all ready to go. So I'm just going to start stitching another, and you could use your ruler at this point. I'm just going to use my walking foot to guide me. And you're going to do the same thing. And you're going to just keep on doing this until you have 4 lines stitched, which will give you 3 holes. I think that was 8. Yep. See how that lines up real nicely over here? There we go. So then stitch, and then when you get close, right past the background. I wish I could see better, but I can't. And we said 8. Oh, that worked out good. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whoop, I went 9. I'm going to go back 1. Hopefully that works out. It does. Look how pretty that is, guys. See how it lines up just like the other ones? But that is 4. 1, 2, 3. We did 4. So I have three in there. So I didn't even have to go that far. I just didn't count. Wasn't even paying any attention. So at this point, I am going to go ahead and lift my needle, pull it out over here, cut threads, and then by doing that, I can pull up the bottom thread. If I wanted to back it out, I could, but I don't want to. Who wants to rip seams, right? Who wants to rip threads? And I'll just simply tie it off. And I've got my 3 stripes. 3 stripes on this side, 3 stripes on this side. So I just have to finish, pull it over here to where you can see it better. I just have to finish on each side. I have to do 3 more stitches to give me a gap of 3 stitches. So I'm going to do 3 more, another gap, and 3 more. On one side, you'll start at the bottom. On one side, you'll start at the top. But you just get your 3 stitches in, or your 3 gaps in, or 4 stitches, put a nice large gap in it, and start over again. So I will see you guys when I'm finished. Okay. So once you've got it all quilted, you want to go ahead and square it. And as you can see, I had a little shrinkage going on just a little bit. And one of the things I need to reiterate, I said it earlier in text, but I want to point out, however you're going to quilt your tree, make sure you do your tree and your trunk first, and then do your outsides. It helps to spread out any extra fabric. I got so excited to show you how I did this quilting that I forgot to do it first. Not the end of the world, but it's definitely preferable if you do this first. Now, I stitched in the ditch very simply around the tree, along the stripes and the trunk. And I know that it won't be easy to see even if I took a picture, but I can see the tree and the stripes. It just looks, it looks great. Absolutely wonderful. So I love this. Now, one of the things that I did on the first one was a scrappy binding. If you do regular binding, because this is a rectangle, so it'd be very easy, it'll take you 1/4 of a yard, like I said earlier. It's 53 inches in perimeter, add 10 inches, and that will definitely become 63 inches. So it's about 2 strips. A little bit more than a strip and a half at 40 inches. Now I used some of the other prints that match the same colors inside that 10-inch square pack to give it just a little bit of a scrappy look. And they're all snowflakes, but I didn't use any of them inside the tree, so it gave it a little variation. And all I simply did was cut one straight line, and then I actually used 2 1/4 binding, and this time also because it's just a small Santa cookie rug, and I cut those in half. So these are actually 5 inches. And as you can see, you lose an awful lot. Now this took me 21 5-inch strips, okay? And I didn't know for sure because like I told you, I'm not quite certain how much I'm gonna lose. You know, how much is actually calculated, and I don't wanna do any math. I wanna make it simple. So I just started with 20 or 15. I don't remember exactly which. And I did the fake run, guys. And I, you know, had some extras because when I split them in half, I didn't use them all. And I just simply went around and did a fake run just to be sure that I would have enough. And when I very first did it, I didn't have enough. Okay, so I kept adding. So no matter what scraps you use or how big you use them, and look, I'm barely gonna meet. So you know what that means I'm gonna do? I'm actually gonna put another strip on here. So it's gonna take me 22 strips, and that's fine. That'll be fun. So I'll add another one of my strips that I have and make sure I have enough to overlap so that I can hide this and do the joining together much easier. I don't want to stress myself out. So it will take me 22 and I will have leftover. And to me, that is not a big deal. But that's how you want to do this. So if you're looking to stretch yourself a little bit, doing a scrappy binding can actually, for a couple reasons. You got to figure out how much you need, and it's inevitable that I'm going to get a seam in one of these corners. It's just going to happen, and that's fine. It stretches you a little bit, and it gives you a better understanding and help increase your skills. So it's actually a lot of fun, and I love the color. I love, 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 especially up against this gray and this black. I think it allows it to pop. I still think the white's my favorite, but we'll see here at the end. So I'm going to get my extra strip on for a count of 22, and I am then going to get my binding on, and I am going to machine bind it completely, 100%. So when I get us all finished, I will see you guys in just a bit. So there you have it. This one in gray with a black trunk and a white with a brown. Now it's funny because my family is actually divided. My daughter likes the gray the best. My husband likes the white the best. But you know, I even got to thinking you could even go even further with this and just, you know, embellish all kinds of things inside your tree. You could put a star at the top. You could buy buttons that were snowflakes to put in the background. I mean, you could really have a lot of fun with this. But I really think it's a neat thing to have a little scrappy Christmas of your own and build some new tradition for you and your little ones that add a little magic to your season. So if you have any questions though, don't hesitate to drop them down below, or you can email me, or you can even visit us today live at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the United States for a live Facebook session. Link for that is also down below. But you can definitely come out and I will be there to answer any questions you may have. And sometimes I add things that I want to talk about. I didn't feel like it was clear enough, but it gives you an opportunity to ask me right there on the spot, and I will answer your questions live for you. So that's all we got for Christmas Wednesdays, guys. I hope you were inspired. If you decide to make one of these and you go really scrappy, I would super love to see it. You can share it very easily inside our Creative Kingdom group on Facebook. The link for that will also be down below. Love to see a super scrappy one of these. I think that would be just absolutely darling. Mine's controlled. It's scrappy, but it's controlled, right? So I think it'd be really neat to be able to see some of those scrappy things going on. But that's it for this week. I will see you same time, same place next week, right here. But until then, may y'all continue to be inspired, productive, and joyful, and never stop making your dreams in quilting come true. And for this season, whatever holiday that you are celebrating, I hope that your home is filled with love, joy, happiness, hope, and peace. Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy quilting. See y'all soon.